The sound of fabric tearing echoed in the narrow alley, followed by the sharp intake of Jessica Marlowe's breath. 3 men reeking of whiskey and arrogance stood around her smirking as one held the ripped piece of her blouse like a trophy. They had shoved her against the damp brick wall, the cold seeping through her skin, their jeers cutting as deep as the night air. Her heart pounded, but her eyes burned with a silent promise this humiliation would not go unanswered. Jessica, 34, had spent over a decade building her career as a defense attorney in downtown Chicago. She'd faced hostile witnesses, ruthless prosecutors, and the pressure of life-altering verdicts, but nothing had prepared her for the sheer violation of this moment. The men had followed her from the courthouse parking lot, their drunken taunts growing bolder with each step. She'd ignored them, keeping her pace steady until the tallest one blocked her path, forcing her into the alley. Their laughter was loud, obnoxious, and calculated to draw power from her discomfort. "Thought you lawyers were tough." One sneered, his breath hot with alcohol. "Guess not." Another grinned, yanking at her blouse until the buttons gave way. The sting of the cold air on her skin was nothing compared to the molten rage that flared in her chest. She fought the urge to strike back, not out of fear, but because she understood leverage. And right now, they had it. A passing car's headlights briefly swept across the alley, startling the men enough for Jessica to slip sideways and put a few feet between them. She didn't run. She just stood there, clutching her torn blouse, her breathing even. Her mind was already racing, not with panic, but with calculation. She had seen their faces, their tattoos, the way one of them favored his left leg. She noted the gold chain around the ringleader's neck and the small scar under his right eye. Evidence. When they finally lost interest and staggered off laughing, Jessica walked calmly back toward her car. Every step felt like a march into a storm she was determined to control. She had learned long ago that revenge wasn't about emotion. It was about timing precision and making sure the scales tipped so far in your favor that the other side never saw it coming. That night, in the privacy of her apartment, Jessica poured herself a glass of red wine and replayed every detail. She knew how predators thought, how their confidence swelled when they thought no consequences would follow. But she also knew something they didn't. She had the skills to dismantle them in ways they couldn't even imagine. She didn't just know the law, she knew people. She could break them without ever raising her voice, but if she had to use her hands, she was trained for that too. Her father, a retired Marine, had insisted she learn self-defense before she ever set foot in a courtroom. "You never know when the fight comes to you," he used to say. The Bullies had made the mistake of thinking she was just a woman in heels with legal briefs in her bag. They didn't know about the years she'd spent practicing arm locks, joint manipulation, and the subtle art of redirecting an opponent's strength against them. Jessica set her empty glass down and opened her laptop. She would find them, not to talk, not to threaten, but to take away the one thing they valued most: control. The torn blouse lay draped over her chair, a reminder that the clock had started. Her plan would begin before the week was over, and when it unfolded, there would be no shadows to hide them, no crowd to cheer them on. Only her, the truth, and the moment their smug confidence shattered into panic. Jessica didn't have to search far to find her starting point. Chicago's legal community was a web of overlapping acquaintances, courthouse regulars, and gossip channels that moved faster than official records. The next morning, she paid a discreet visit to her friend Carla, a paralegal with an uncanny knack for pulling up case files for reference in minutes. Carla leaned back in her chair, eyes narrowing as Jessica gave a calm but detailed description of the 3 men, their clothing accents, and any distinguishing features. "Sounds like you're talking about Travis Rourke, Denny Hale, and Brett Vance," Carla said finally. "They've been in and out of the system for years. Bar fights, petty theft, and at least one assault charge that got dropped. guessing you didn't bump into them by accident. Jessica's mouth curved into the faintest smile. No. And I think it's time they realize the law isn't just a playground for them to slip through. With Carla's help, she dug into their backgrounds. Travis, the ringleader, with the gold chain, was out on probation for a DUI. Denny, the stocky one who had blocked her path, had a bench warrant for unpaid child support. Brett, the youngest, was trying to keep a low profile after being fired from a warehouse job for stealing inventory. Individually, they were small-time trouble. Together, they were reckless enough to escalate and stupid enough to leave trails. Jessica jotted notes in a slim, leather-bound book she kept for cases that weren't officially cases yet. She wasn't going to confront them with accusations. She was going to confront them with choices. And first, she needed to know just how far they'd go when they thought the law wasn't looking. She spent the next 2 evenings shadowing their usual haunts, dive bars, a pool hall on Halstead, and a dingy strip of garages behind an old auto shop. They moved like they owned the night, laughing loud, shoving each other around, treating anyone in their way like props in their own drunken performance. Jessica stayed in the shadows, wearing a plain hoodie, hair tucked under a baseball cap, noting every habit. The more she watched, the more she saw cracks in their armor. Travis had a temper that flared when someone so much as bumped his elbow. Denny froze when anyone mentioned cops, and Brett, for all his swagger, kept glancing at his phone like he was waiting for a call he dreaded. Weaknesses, every one of them, and she knew how to push. By Thursday, her plan was ready. She'd bait them with an offer that matched their level of arrogance, a chance to finish what they started without the risk of police or witnesses. To sell it, she needed the right message. Jessica borrowed a friend's untraceable burner phone and sent a single text to Travis. You wanted to see if I could handle myself. Meet me at the South Point garage, Saturday 9 p.m. No cops, no snitches, just us. The response came within minutes. Better not waste my time, sweetheart. Jessica let the phone drop onto her counter, satisfaction curling in her chest. They thought she was walking into their world again, unguarded, unprepared. In truth, she was building the perfect, stage-dim lighting, echoing concrete walls, and just enough open space for 3 men to realize how small they could feel. She also arranged for a subtle insurance policy. A former client who owed her a favor agreed to set up discreet cameras inside the garage, ensuring every second of what would happen next was captured in crystal clarity. There would be no doubt, no denial, and no way for them to twist the truth. On Saturday night, she'd walk into that garage, not as a victim, but as the storm they never saw coming. And by the time she walked out, their laughter would be nothing but an echo. Saturday arrived with the kind of biting Chicago wind that cut straight through a coat. Jessica dressed with precision, choosing dark jeans, sturdy boots, and a fitted leather jacket over a plain black shirt, practical, unrestricted, and unassuming. She secured her hair in a low ponytail, no loose strands to be grabbed, and slid a pair of thin leather gloves into her pocket. To anyone else, she'd look like just another woman heading somewhere she didn't want to be. To the 3 men waiting for her, she'd look like prey returning to the trap. The South Point garage sat at the edge of a half-abandoned industrial district, its upper levels roped off for years. Only the first 2 floors were dimly lit by flickering fluorescent tubes, each hum echoing through the cavernous space. Her insurance policy was already in place. Tiny wireless cameras tucked into the metal beams, their blinking lights masked by electrical tape. The feed streamed directly to an encrypted folder on a secure server. Jessica arrived 10 minutes early, walking the perimeter, counting her paces, checking sight lines. She noted the spots where shadows pooled deepest and the areas where light would catch her movements. Every step sharpened her focus. She wasn't just here to confront them. She was here to control the story. The sound of tires screeching broke the quiet. A black pickup truck swung into the garage, its headlights briefly illuminating her before they cut. Travis climbed out first wearing the same gold chain and a smirk that hadn't changed since the alley. Denny followed, cracking his knuckles while Brett lagged behind, his eyes darting nervously. Well, well, Travis drawled, walking toward her. Didn't think you'd actually show. Must have missed us. Jessica didn't flinch. I said I'd give you a chance to finish what you started. I keep my word. Denny laughed, stepping in to circle her, while Brett hung back, pretending to check his phone. You got some nerve, Denny muttered. Thought maybe you learned your place. My place, Jessica said, her voice low, deliberate. My place is wherever I decide it is. And tonight, it's right here. They drew closer, testing her space. Jessica's stance shifted subtly, weight-balanced hands loose at her sides, eyes tracking every muscle twitch. When Travis lunged forward, aiming to grab her arm, she sidestepped smoothly, his momentum carrying him just far enough to expose his flank. She didn't take the bait, not yet. You scared, Travis, taunted, straightening. Jessica's gaze was steady. You're mistaking patience for fear. Big mistake. For the next few minutes, she let them talk, letting their own bravado build a rhythm. Every insult, every half step closer, was another layer of rope tightening around them. The cameras caught everything. The sneers, the circling, the gestures that would later look a lot like threats. When Travis reached for her again, this time with a fistful of her jacket, Jessica made her move. She caught his wrist mid-grab, twisting sharply, and stepping in to lock his arm between her own. The sound of his grunt echoed like a gunshot in the empty garage. Denny froze, mid-step, eyes widening. Brett's phone slipped from his hand. Travis's smirk was gone, replaced by the first flicker of real fear. Jessica's grip tightened, forcing his shoulder down her forearm, pressing hard enough to make his knees buckle. Still think you can decide where my place is? She asked, her voice cold, controlled. Travis's breath came in ragged gasps. Let go. Not yet, she said. We're just getting started. The cameras didn't just catch a fight, they captured a shift in power. And soon, that shift would destroy them in ways a courtroom never could. The pressure in Travis's arm joint was unbearable. Jessica could feel the tremor of his muscles as he tried and failed to resist. His free hand clawed at her forearm, but she shifted her weight, pressing the lock tighter until a sharp gasp escaped his throat. Hurts, doesn't it? Jessica said. Her voice calm, almost conversational. That's what control feels like when you don't have it. Denny took a cautious step forward, but the instant Jessica's eyes cut toward him, he hesitated. Something in her gaze told him this wasn't the same woman they'd cornered in that alley. Brett, still frozen in place, looked like he wanted to disappear entirely. Travis's bravado cracked first. All right, let go. His voice had lost its mocking tone. Now, it was raw, edged with panic. Jessica leaned closer to his ear, her words low but deliberate. Not until you say exactly what you did to me in that alley. Loud enough for your friends, and loud enough for anyone who might be listening. He twisted, trying to break free, but the movement only made the pain sharper. We messed with you. Okay, say it. His teeth clenched. We ripped your blouse, shoved you. We were drunk, Wrong answer, Jessica interrupted, applying just enough additional pressure to make him groan in agony. Drunk isn't an excuse. Say it like the coward you are. Travis's voice cracked as the reality of his situation set in. We attacked you. We thought you wouldn't fight back. The words echoed against the concrete, picked up crystal clear by every hidden camera. Denny shifted uneasily, glancing between his leader and Jessica. Brett's face was pale, his eyes glued to the floor. Jessica released the pressure just enough for Travis to breathe normally, then addressed the others. without breaking the hold. You two can either join him in saying it, or you can explain to the police why you were here tonight. And trust me, they'll find a lot more on you than this." Denny opened his mouth shut. It then muttered, "We went too far. Shouldn't have touched you." Brett nodded weakly, adding, "It was wrong. I didn't want to." "That's not what it looked like," Jessica cut in sharply. "But you're going to make it right." She shoved Travis forward, forcing him to kneel on the cold concrete still locked in her grip. "Here's the deal. I walk out of here tonight without a scratch, and every one of you disappears from my life. You step out of line even once, and this." She tilted her head toward the dark corners where the cameras hid, goes straight to the cops. "And the press, understand?" Travis nodded, the fight gone from his body. Yeah, we understand." Jessica let him go with a sharp shove, stepping back as he cradled his arm. She didn't flinch when he glared up at her. His eyes no longer held the smug confidence from before, only the raw humiliation of a man who'd been outplayed on his own turf. "Get out," she ordered, "all of you." They scrambled for the truck, the sound of their boots echoing across the garage. The engine roared to life, tires screeching as they sped away, leaving Jessica alone in the vast, cold space. She exhaled slowly, her pulse steady. The cameras had done their job, but more importantly, so had she. She pulled out her phone and sent a single text to her contact monitoring the feed package delivered. "Secure everything." The evidence was safe, the message was sent, and the balance of power was no longer in question. But Jessica wasn't finished, not yet. There was still one more move to make, and it would be the one that ensured they could never touch her or anyone else again. By the next morning, the footage was already stored in multiple secure locations. Jessica made sure of it. Copies sat on encrypted drives, a cloud account under an alias, and one in the hands of a trusted colleague who knew how to drop it into the right inboxes if anything happened to her. The men could pretend last night never happened, but she had a record they couldn't erase. She could have gone straight to the police. The evidence was airtight verbal confessions, visual proof of the harassment, even their attempts to intimidate her again. But Jessica had spent years watching cases fall apart over technicalities, plea deals, and witnesses suddenly forgetting details. This wasn't going to be one of those cases. If she was going to take them down, she wanted it to stick, and she wanted them to feel the walls close in long before the cuffs clicked. Her first move was to send an anonymous tip to a local investigative journalist. She trusted someone with a reputation for digging into small-time thugs with big egos. The package included still frames from the footage and a short factual statement. 3 known offenders repeat harassment of women in Chicago's South Loop. Here's proof. The journalist's reply came within an hour. "We'll run with it. Thanks for shining a light on them." That same afternoon, Jessica arranged for the footage to leak to an online community dedicated to exposing violent offenders. Within hours, the images of Travis, Denny, and Brett were circulating faster than any legal summons could be delivered. The internet didn't forget, and Jessica knew the public exposure would rattle them far worse than a court date. The phone calls started the next day, first from Brett mumbling apologies, begging her to make it stop. Then Denny, his voice tight, insisting they'd leave her alone if she just pulled the videos. Travis didn't call. Instead, she received a text from an unknown number. "You think this is funny? You'll regret it." Jessica replied with a single attachment. A screenshot of the full confession, paired with the timestamp and location metadata burned into the corner. "You already regret it. Stay away." 2 days later, the arrests came. Not for the garage incident that was still under wraps, but for the outstanding charges each of them had hanging over their heads. The journalist had done their part, feeding the police just enough information to justify digging deeper. Probation violations, failure to appear in court, evidence tying Brett to the warehouse theft. All of it came crashing down at once. Jessica didn't watch their perp walks on the evening news. She didn't need to. She was at her desk working on a new case when Carla walked in with 2 coffees and a knowing grin. "You here?" she asked. Jessica just smiled, sipping her coffee. "I heard." There was no celebration, no fist-pumping victory. Just the quiet satisfaction of a plan executed with precision. The 3 men who thought they could humiliate her now sat in holding cells, stripped of the swagger they wore like armor. In the footage, her insurance remained locked away, a silent reminder of what happened when someone mistook patience for weakness. That night, Jessica took the torn blouse from where it had hung for days and placed it in a box, sealing it shut. Not as a trophy, but as a reminder, one she hoped she'd never have to open again. She had won, not because she fought harder, but because she fought smarter. And in her world, that was the only fight worth winning. Jessica's ordeal was more than a clash in a dark alley. It was a lesson in reclaiming power without letting rage dictate the moves. She understood that real strength isn't just about physical defense. It's about using every tool, knowledge, timing, strategy to turn the tables. The bullies relied on fear and impulse. She relied on patience and precision. In the end, justice isn't always loud or dramatic. It's often quiet, deliberate, and undeniable. Her victory was proof that those who weaponize intimidation can be dismantled by those who know their worth and refuse to be defined by a single moment of vulnerability.